Greg MacPherson, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Greg, how you doing, man?
Excellent. Thank you so much. How's your day going over there?
Yeah, it's going good. It's the first sunny day here in Winnipeg in a while. It's been a real winter. It's just gone and gone and gone and stretched, and spring was garbage. So today, actually, it's nice outside. I'm really feeling good. I think the whole city just like turns on a dime. People are all walking around with shorts on today, and it's not really warm, but it's enough that Canadians kind of come out of the woodwork. So yeah, I feel pretty good. I'm excited to talk with you.
I tell you what, it's the same thing here in Buffalo, a notoriously bad weather city. So I feel your pain on the long winters. Our winter isn't as cold, as bitterly cold as what you get, but we get pummeled with months and months of very heavy snow. So I feel your pain deeply, and I'm glad to hear that it's turning a corner for you up there. So, Greg, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, however you see fit. There may be some people out there listening who aren't familiar with your work, or maybe need a little bit of a refresher.
Sure. I'm a musician and community organizer, I guess, in Winnipeg. And Winnipeg is about 8 hours north of Minneapolis. So a couple hours north of Grand Forks, North Dakota, across the border. And I'm a musician. I started playing music in the early 90s in Winnipeg, and I put out a lot of records on G7 Welcoming Committee records, a couple of independents, Small Man Records, a record label out of Europe called Playrec out of Copenhagen, and then a bunch on Disintegration Records, which is a label that I own. And and then I work, now I work for the city of Winnipeg, actually, which is kind of weird, but it's a cool job, and kind of continuing a lot of work I've done over the last 15 years, 20 years, I guess, really doing community organizing. And I'm trying to get Winnipeg to modernize the way we look at crime prevention. So yeah, it's pretty interesting work. And I've been doing it just for the last 6 months. So that's me in a nutshell. Yeah.
What was the transition into that work? What were you doing just before that? I'm just curious.
I was the executive director of a nonprofit, a neighborhood renewal corporation on the west side of Winnipeg's downtown in the inner city. Winnipeg's a really interesting city. It has a long history of I guess segregation is a good way to put it. It's a colonial city. This was the traditional homelands of a number of indigenous populations and peoples and nations. And so the history and kind of story of Winnipeg is really how we relate to those people and as settlers, I guess. And and so I've been working in this area for a long time. West Broadway is a neighborhood that had a high population of indigenous people, and a lot of the past 20 years has gone into trying to figure out, more and more so how to work together to make the community a better place for everyone to live. And it's pretty cool. It was a great work. I was there a long time, so I saw this job come up, and I was asked by a colleague to look into it, and I did. And so far so good. A little bit weird working for government. That's not really something that I've done a ton of, but I'm trying it out.
Amazing. I kind of feel like all of the stuff you just described, like considering you're a G7 Records alum at this point, it kind of fits in with like almost like the mission statement that label was going for all those years ago. Like they were a label that worked with like activist oriented artists and things like that. And it sounds like you're kind of, taking that into a new path. It seems pretty much aligned with what the label was going for back in the day.
Yeah, I think that I fit on that label in a weird way. I think that my actual life and who I am is probably the best fit. Like not necessarily my aesthetic or the work that I was doing as a musician. I wasn't making hardcore music, but just Winnipeg's a fairly small community, and I knew. Obviously I knew of propaganda in the 90s, but I also knew a couple of the people from that band and from the community, and just as neighbors, right? So it made sense in an organic way to be working with G7 to put out my music, and Yeah, but it's a weird fit for sure. It's a weird fit, but I think, yeah, just my life and who I am, what I do, and what I've been doing for a long, long time, just sort of fit in with the overall kind of philosophy and ethos of the label at that time.
Was there an order for you? Were you into activism first or into music first? Like, did they develop at the same time along your life path? How did that all come together?
Well, yeah, I was. I was involved in student politics, student activism in the early '90s a little bit, and I got a degree in labor studies. It's a long story, but I ended up getting pretty focused on the idea that I had to take some responsibility with all the privilege that I have in my life to do something that leaves the world a better place for me having been here. And talking with some of the other artists on the label over the years, I think that's a sensibility that we all sort of shared. And certainly Derek Hogue, who's one of the driving forces behind the last real like 15 years of or at least the last 10 years of that label's existence. That was something we talked a lot about. And yeah, no, I got on to G7, and then it's funny because our first album that we put out with them, Good Times Coming Back Again, was released in 2002, but we finished recording it on September 10th, 2001. And so the day before 9/11, and then releasing that album at that specific time on that label, surrounded by, hardcore artists and touring, with the Weaker Thans and with Propaganda and playing with a lot of those bands, like it really politicized what I was doing. And I kind of drove a little bit of that activism, I think, to get a bit more serious and focused and better at it. And I think we probably all have the Canadian equivalent to a FBI file or whatever. I'm sure, especially back then, right? We were all looking very critically at our border, at our security infrastructure, and talking about it in a vocal way, very loud way. So yeah, I'm proud of those years. I think I learned a lot, and I'm proud of the music that I was part of. And yeah, anyway, I'm off on a tangent on you, but it's been a while since I thought about this, so I'm excited to talk with you about it, and I appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, I'm just wondering about how the signing to G7. I don't know if there was actually like a formal signing or anything like that, like how indie labels worked in the late 90s, early 2000s. But I'm wondering how you got hooked up with the label and decided to make a go of it with them particularly.
Yeah, that's a good story. Well, I had a couple of different labels, local labels that I was looking at, and I was friends with musicians who were taking it fairly seriously, and they all said, you should get a label to put your record out. I did a couple of independent releases, and then I think I just stopped by the G7 offices, and
at Albert Street.
Yeah, 91, yeah. And I dropped in, and George was there, and I was just like, hey, hi George, I'm Greg, and we met at some point previously, but he's like, oh yeah, man, yeah, it's yeah, I know you. And I gave him a cassette or something, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm interested in putting out some music. I don't know if you guys are looking to put out any local artists, but anyway, that's kind of how it went. And I think George just forgot or said no or something. But then maybe a month or two later, I got a call from Lorna Vetters, who was one of the original people working with G7 at that time. And Lorna, she's in San Francisco now, I think, but anyway, she's like, I don't know what George was thinking. Like, are you still interested? We're totally interested. Like, let's put something out. And yeah, it was great. That was, it was a great decision, and very lucky that all worked out the way it did.
I love that that all happened. Isn't Lorna the one who did the narration on the Propaganda letter of resignation, the John K. Samson song on that 7-inch? I think Lorna recited the poem on that John K. Samson song.
You'd know better than me. That rings a bell though. Yeah, that's like some cobwebs in my brain. You're starting to dig out. Yeah,
that's
sure.
going way
that sounds
back.
right.
Okay, so whenever you started releasing music with the label, I know that there's a history of you playing shows with Propaganda specifically, among many other bands, obviously. But I'm wondering if you have any stories or standout memories of being like a solo performer on like a bill full of like rowdy maniac bands. Like, yeah, I'm just curious about your experiences with that. Like if it went well, if it went horribly, maybe somewhere in between as well. I'm just curious about stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, some of my favorite moments happened when I got kind of shoehorned onto bills that were, you know, thrash bands or really like hardcore bands. And then me, and I'd be playing by myself, right? And you'd have people in the audience that were just so angry that I was, you know, subjecting them to this solo artist music. But it did force me really to kind of become a more dynamic performer. I think I had that anyway, but this chapter in my kind of music career or whatever you call it is it's definitely a time of like I really had to grow. I remember one time playing here locally. The first time I opened for Propaganda was here at a venue that's gone now called Le Rendezvous in the French part of Winnipeg. And yeah, I played. It was, I don't know, a couple thousand people, and everyone was going nuts. This is probably 2002, maybe something like that. And yeah, I played solo, and it was great. It was really great. People went kind of wild, and I went to a place in my brain that was fairly dark and angry. And it's the first time I had done this song, "Bank Robber" by The Clash, and I did a version of it that's kind of different, and people really dug it, and it was yeah, it was fun. But I did a tour with them down the West Coast a few years later, and I did a few solo tunes there, but the audience is just so wild and really committed and outrageous. Like Propaganda's audience, I think, like, no offense to you, I'm sure you have your own podcast, so I think you're probably front row kind of going wild sort of a fan, right?
I love them.
Yeah. And a lot of people are really, really passionate and have kind of an attitude about Propaganda that's almost like fever pitch, right? And like there's so much ideology and life choices and just they've really kind of crystallized a lot of people's thinking about where we are in the world at any specific moment in all their albums, right? And yeah, to be part of that on tour and be kind of face to face with that audience that's like, show me what you got, weird Canadian solo artist, right? It was great. It was really, I think things went really well on those tours for me. And there were some intense moments, like people throwing beers at me and right, like lots of people just like, get off the stage and, which is super fun in a way, like that kind of challenging, almost violence in an audience, but also really just respect and reverence for Propaganda and for kind of like a movement, right? So
yeah,
we got treated pretty well by that audience, and yeah, I had a lot of fun playing those shows.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about your G7 releases in particular. So we've got a few here. We'll go through them. We'll hear a little bit of music, and then we'll chat about it, some stuff later on too. So I want to hear about Balance on a Pin. I'm wondering if you could tell me a bit about this time and place for this G7 release.
This is, I think, the last thing we released, and this is an album I put out by myself in 1999, and I sold tons of them, like thousands of copies of this. It was the first album I ever really toured, and yeah, I guess kind of the connection to Propaganda for this album is probably Jason Tate's on it. Jason's from the Weaker Thans. Yeah, there's some really, really spectacular musicianship on this album. The bass player from Good Times Coming Back Again, Barry Morochnik, kind of helped produce this, and he's gone on to play with all sorts of people. I guess probably most famous is Nico Case.
Oh, wonderful.
On the West Coast. Yeah, and he's an amazing drummer, just an amazing musician, and Yeah, that's an album that's I think it still holds up. I'm pretty young when I did that, and
Mm-hmm.
I listened to it. I'm like, ooh, pretty young, you know.
Is
But
there so you had this was pre G7 and then they just
yeah,
re-released it like near the end of your time with the label?
yeah. I think my understanding of the label, and I mean I won't speak for those guys, but I remember a time when they had put out a lot of music in a short period.
Yeah.
And there's only so many bands that kind of are making music at a level that I think would suit G7 and are saying things and are kind of part of any sort of value system that they can relate to and that they feel comfortable with, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think at that point there was just maybe a lull in releases, and Derek was like, "Hey, would you think about releasing Balanced on a Pin on G7?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would be great." And I'm glad it got out there. It's really yeah, it's for whatever reason people still like that album, so it suits me just fine.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear a tune from it. We're going to hear Genuinely Frozen. And I'm wondering if you can just tell me a little bit about this song before we lead in for the listeners here.
Yeah, sure. This is a song. It's kind of I was listening to a lot of I worked at that time for the city actually way back. I was a cemetery worker and I listened to
Cool.
yeah, I for 6 years I buried the dead. And I listened
Wow.
to our public broadcaster here, and they had a kind of a famous architect writer named Moshe Safdie being interviewed, and he put out a book, City, I think it's City After the Automobile, and I read the book right away afterwards and really kind of captured my attention about urban design and the turn that our society's taken towards just absolute kind of worship and dedication to the automobile. And this song is sort of just my reflection of what it's like to live in a city that we literally paved over our railroad tracks here. Like we had tram cars, like proper streetcar system back into the 40s and 50s, and they just raised it and paved over it, and they're still there every so often
Yeah, the tracks.
yeah, they'll come up through the road, and yeah, it seems like we're gonna get back there at some point. But when I wrote this, we were pretty far away from like a public transit system we could feel proud of, and yeah, it's I like this song.
All right, let's hear Genuinely Frozen from Balanced on a Pin.
The sidewalks cracked and the people don't look so good on my street. Our fences are so tall, there's not much hope anymore left for the neighborhood. And I've been away, I've seen other cities where the bus runs all night long. I'm tired of walking, I just wanna get out from under these broken dreams outside and slip out from under these broken dreams outside. Somewhere out over the skyline and out past the city lights, over the bridge you can't look at the river from. There's a broke down farm where my mother was born. She said that they were only ever young, with an open conscience and their whole lives ahead of them, spelled out with the truth and a golden car. For the mystery of the dark and the falling of the night, genuinely frozen by the fear of growing older and picking out the colors of these broken dreams outside. And slipping out from under these broken dreams outside. Sidewalks cracked and the people don't look so good. On my street our fences are so tall, there's not much hope anymore left for the neighborhood. And I've been away, I've seen other cities where the bus runs all night long. I'm tired of walking, I just wanna get out from under these broken dreams outside and slip out from under these broken dreams outside.
All right. So, Greg, before we talk about the next album, you just mentioned that you were a cemetery worker. And I was thinking a second ago about how I was watching one of your music videos today from your band Figure Walking, and there's a cemetery in the video. Is that like, is there a connection there?
Yeah, that was Brookside Cemetery, which is one of the biggest cemeteries in Western Canada. And that's where I worked for the most part when I was a cemetery worker. So any chance I have to go back there I usually go. It's beautiful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Well, let's chat about the next G7 release that I've got on my list here. Good Times Coming Back Again. This one came up a little bit earlier, and I'm wondering if you can just tell me a little bit about the production, the personnel, anything behind this record that stands out to you as an important memory of making this one.
Yeah, we drove down. So Steve Bates is kind of, at this point, he joined my band, and Steve was like a few years older. He was in a band called Bulletproof Nothing here in Winnipeg. And he also ran a label called Sister Records. And if anyone's interested in like really cool, Midwestern, Minnesota, Manitoba music from the early to mid 90s, check out Sister Records if you can find it on the internet. But Steve and I rented a car and we drove to Toronto with all of our musical equipment. And this is back at the time, G7 had some money, right? This is the independent label movement was in full swing, and Propaganda was massive, and the Weaker Thans were selling thousands of albums, and we were selling hundreds and in some cases thousands of albums. And so there was money to be made, I guess, and certainly money was being spent. So we went down there to Toronto and recorded. Like I said, just before 9/11 happened, we did a lot of the recording at that time. And a guy named John Sutton, who was the bass player in the Weaker Thans, did a bunch of the recording with us as the engineer. And Jason Tate, again from the Weaker Thans, was my drummer for a number of years, and he's on that album. Barry Miroshnik, who I mentioned earlier, is also on that album playing bass. And yeah, it's all 2-inch tape. It's an album that was made the old-fashioned way, and we did a lot of splicing and cutting, and something we did another couple months later. It's a funny story. The mix too. I was living by myself downtown in Winnipeg in this little apartment, and I had like a walk-in closet as my bedroom. It was a really small studio apartment, and I was supposed to fly to Toronto to mix the album and finish it all. And I got a knock on my door, and my caretaker, I open it up, and he's got like a guy with him who's got basically like an ice pick or something in his hand. And they're like, "Hey, we got to come in and have a look around your apartment. I think there's a leak." And he comes in and just knocks a hole, like big hole, a foot wide in my kitchen wall. And then he goes into my bathroom and he literally knocks down half of the bathroom stall, like the shower. And he finds the leak, and I'm like, "Well, I got to leave. I'm going to the airport, And he says, "Okay, well, I'll keep you posted. We'll have this fixed by the time you're back, So I call him the night before I got back, and he didn't answer. And then I got back, and there was yellow tape over my door. And I opened the door through it, and I looked down, and there was literally no floor. There was just like floor joists. And down into the next apartment, there was also just floor joists, and all my stuff was stacked in the walk-in closet. So that was, the day after we finished tracking, 9/11 happened. The day after we finished mixing, I came back to my apartment being completely decimated. So it was a funny start to that album, but I think that one holds up too. There's a lot of songs on there that we still play, and I'm proud of it.
Well, let's hear a tune from it. We're going to hear Numbers. And I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about this one. What stands out to you about it?
This one, the memory I have of this is Jason and me. I had this idea. I wanted it to sound kind of like that album. I forget the name of the song. Mars, the band Mars has this one song, very famous, but it has a sort of a descending tone. And so we found a tone generator in this old studio, and we did this timing thing where I would cut it in and out, and Jason took the tone generator and just tuned it down. So you hear on the recording, it goes like do, 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 do. So that's me and Jason laughing our asses off with the tone generator.
Nice.
Like a gate. Yeah, it sounds cool. I recently me and my current drummer Rob started playing that again, and yeah, I like this song. It holds up.
All right, well, let's hear Numbers.
Decided and throw it all away. Another day's another time. Got nothing now to do with me. I don't think about the future. I don't like to deal with numbers. We like to sit outside, watch the motion, only see so far from where we live. Separate lines half crossing out and intercept through fields, and I don't like to deal with numbers. I don't think about the future. I just wait here until the sun goes down. Everything is simple now. Father's clothes, can't think alone. Spend all our time waiting for something new to come along. Get our name out in the hall and pretend there's someone out there who cares. I don't think about the future. I don't like to deal with numbers. Think about the future. I don't like to deal with numbers.
Awesome. Okay, so the next release I have on my list here is Maintenance. And I want to know about this record because I love this one. I listened to it today a couple of times. It just really is grabbing my attention right now as far as a lot of your material goes. And I'm wondering if you can just tell me a little bit about this one and what stands out to you about this record.
Well, it's funny because G7 spent a whack of money on Good Times Coming Back Again,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they probably broke even at least. But I've sort of felt, I'm pretty blue collar, and I like to hold my own in terms of financing. Like I don't like the idea of owing anybody any money or anybody kind of doing me any favors, which is a sort of stupid, but that's a longer story. But I remember making maintenance with the idea of just like, let's make it really easy. I'll play solo. A lot of people after I put out the last two albums were kind of saying, hey, you should do a solo album. And I thought that would be a good idea too. So I recorded these all on the cheap. Recorded one in London, Ontario, which is not far from you. It's up near Guelph, I guess, where you were last week.
Yeah.
And my buddy runs a recording school there, and he recorded a couple songs with a buddy of his who was a student at the time, who's gone on to record like Justin Bieber and all, like massive, massive artists. So it was pretty fun. They really knew what they were doing, and we just had a great time. And then I think I recorded a couple other ones, maybe with Chris, if I'm not mistaken. I think I recorded a couple other ones at his home studio, and we put it out. I did the artwork myself, and there's one photo in the artwork you can see of me getting a speeding ticket in my girlfriend's car at like 3:00 in the morning in there. So yeah, that's what I remember about that album.
Tell me a little bit about the photograph on the cover of the skyline. I'm curious about this.
That's a John Schledowitz photo, and John Schledowitz, you probably have maybe intersected somehow with him over the episodes, but John was a real chronicler of that scene at that time in Winnipeg, and he's still taking photos, but he toured with us. He toured with Propagandy a lot, and I love his music. I love his photography. I've got one of his photos right here, in fact, like just sitting beside my computer, and I don't know if you can see it because I got that stupid blur thing on my filter or whatever. But John is a really special artist and just a really cool guy, very involved in the local kind of activist community for a long time too. And that's where that came from. I just wanted to support him, and I thought that photo was super beautiful, and
amazing. Well, I'm thinking about doing a version of the episode cover art using that photo. So I'm glad that John's credit will be given within the episode here. So if I've totally mauled that photo for the episode cover art, you can blame me 100% because the original is absolutely stunning. And I hope that comes through to anybody who may see it. Well, we're going to hear a tune from this one. We're going to hear Good Times, and I love the lyric. I'm just a fucking reporter. And I love how you sing the line Vaseline lens. It's got like this intense inflection and articulation. So I've been loving this song today a couple times to listen to it. And I'm wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about Good Times.
Yeah, sure. That came out, I wrote that. I lived on the West Coast for about a year. I was super poor. It was the only time in my life I couldn't get a job. So I quit the cemetery and moved out west, following my heart, and then it didn't work out. And but I got a lot of songs out of it, really. I wrote that song, a number of other ones that are on Good Times. And then, Good Times coming back again. I felt really good about that song. I think at that point I had already known that I'd be putting my next album out on G7, and I had it in my mind that having political content in my songs was a positive, and that it would help kind of fit with the work that Chris and Jordan, Derek were doing, and Lorna. So that's where that came from.
Awesome. Let's hear Good Times.
Time's coming back again. I seen him touch down on the runway. I seen that old face staring back, pressed up against the glass. I heard a brass band wailing. Middleman got caught out of his skin. It's on a bus across the border. He's got his legs spread, his head cracked, his hands against the wall. He said, I'm just a fucking reporter. Good times coming back again. Good times coming back again. The girl upstairs singing, she sang all night. I turned the stereo on, man, and I went out for the evening, but I couldn't get that song out of my mind. She said, good times coming back. I seen him on the shoulder with her hood up through a Vaseline lens. They got their bags packed tight, man, the key to every city. And I heard they're bringing all of their friends, all of their friends. There's something dead out in the field behind our house. The wind's changing direction. I seen the local man dressing up in the latest style. He said, it's only natural selection. Good times coming back again. I seen him touch down on the runway. I see that old face staring back, pressed up against the glass. I heard a brass band wailing. Good times coming back again. Good times coming back again.
All right, so Greg, I got one more G7 release here. We've got, let's see, we've got Night Flares, and in my notes, I have in big bold letters, engineered by Chris Hanna and recorded at least partially at his house. And I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about this record, the process of making it, the recording process. Tell me the who, what, when, where, why.
It was a convoluted process, to be honest with you. Steve Bates, who I was playing a lot with, and actually he co-wrote a couple of tunes with me on this album. And he took the photo on the cover of this album and did a bunch of the cover art, like the actual layout and design. And Steve's amazing. Steve's he goes by the name Dim Coast. If anyone's interested in his work, it's spectacular. He's a visual artist, but he's also like a soundscape artist. And like I said, he had played in a number of kind of seminal Winnipeg punk bands. And in fact, I think might have been Propagandy's first show, or one of their first shows was also Bulletproof Nothing's maybe first show.
Nice.
And I'm pretty sure that they opened for Fugazi.
Nice.
Yeah. It was a real, like one of those nights in Winnipeg that's sort of legendary.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, Steve was all over this album. Jason lived in Toronto at that time, and I was living kind of in and out of Toronto at that time too, and out of a suitcase. So we did a lot of our practicing in Montreal, where Steve lived, or in Toronto, and then I moved back to Winnipeg for whatever reason, and we recorded the album primarily in Winnipeg. And so at Chris's house, which was really funny. And I remember Chris's house, like, he had this living room with kind of was our vocal booth. So a lot of the amps and everything were in the basement. And then I would re-sing stuff if I needed to upstairs in his living room. And I have like one thing I have as a kind of an asset is a huge set of lungs. Like I can hold a note and sing super loud. Like I'm not a very dynamic singer in terms of my technique or anything, but I can really belt it out.
Nice.
And but I there's this one song on the album. I forget which one it is. It might be called Sun Beats Down or something. And I had this big long note I was going to hold at the end of the song, and I couldn't do it. I could not get the song to stick, the melody to stick. So after a while, we realized it was because he had absolutely like soundproofed his living room, and there was no air at all getting into that living room. So I was basically had exhausted all the air by the second verse of the song, and then every time I tried to do the third final verse, I ran out of oxygen.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. I remember a lot about recording. Chris was just like no ego, super, super sweet guy, really nice. And even now, like, you know, the guy's world famous, really a well-respected artist around the world. And I see him all the time, you know, we'll see him at the grocery store or just walking down the street. And he's so gracious and kind and just a sweet guy. And they were really generous to me. And until I ran my own record label, I didn't realize just how lucky I had it.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of respect for Chris. And this process of recording Night Flares certainly added a ton to that, because he was super patient, super easygoing, and really good too. Like I think his skill set is there on display. He did a great job.
He doesn't play anything on the record, right? He was just the engineer on it.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think maybe he did some backup vocals or something. Something strikes me as a possibility, but I don't think so. No.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, we're going to hear a song from this record. We're going to hear Cutting Room. And this song wound up on another record though, too, right? Like, doesn't this appear on a couple of releases of yours?
This might be on I might be on the European release that I did, that it's just like a compilation of songs from all my albums.
Sun Beat Down?
Yeah, Sun Beats Down.
Okay, Sun Beats Down. Okay, so it's just a compilation that Sun Beats Down. Okay, cool. Because I had never seen Sun Beats Down until I was looking through your Discogs a couple of days ago. So I didn't know what that release was. So I'm glad to actually have that clarified, because I was like, does this appear on like another release? Is it a different version? Is it the same thing? So it's the same one, right? It's like there's not like two versions of it.
No, it's the same. Yeah, it's just a different mastering job, really. There's probably subtle differences, but nothing in the mix. And it's funny, though, actually, a buddy of mine, my friend Cam, who I started Disintegration Records with, 10 years ago now, he just surprised me and remixed all of Night Flares. I had given him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's a great remix. Like, there were things about that process in the mixing that I kind of got frustrated by. It's a long story that every artist has one of those stories, right? And at the end of the day, I was a bit frustrated by some of the mix, and not at the personnel, certainly. Like, we worked with a guy named Craig Boychuk, who's great, but we really tampered with his mixing and kind of forced him to do some things that I wish we hadn't. And so, yeah, we'll put this out again at some point. I think we'll re-release Night Flares in the next couple of years for sure.
Very
and
cool.
This mix is really great. So
tell me a little bit about Cutting Room before we hear it.
Cutting Room, this is one of a couple of songs on the album that the bed tracks, the bass. I played the bass on this, and Jason played drums, and we recorded it on 2-inch tape at the same studio we recorded Good Times Coming Back Again in Toronto. And we just had those. We had the bed tracks for a couple of those songs, and we used them, transferred them at Chris's house, and just sort of built songs on top of them. And this is an interesting song because it's sort of a transition. This album, I started playing a lot with a guy named Mike Germain, who's like a Métis artist and just a really, really talented guitar player and bass player and singer and songwriter. And yeah, I got playing with him, and him and Steve together playing guitar was just like, it was unbelievable. It really cool parts. And I'm playing bass too. I love playing bass, and so yeah, you hear on this this track, you'll hear Mike on one side and Steve on the other, and me down the middle and the bass, and Jason Tate playing drums. And yeah, I love this song. I don't play it as often as I used to because Steve and Mike are both doing other things. It doesn't feel right when you have a song that's so much about the people you're playing with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love this tune.
All right, let's hear it. Cutting Room.
Part actor, I'm a face in the crowd. I'm a walk around backwards, eyes on the ground. I'm so
right. So, Greg, some personnel has come up in the conversation. I've heard the name Jason Tate a couple times. I know that Derek Hogue came up once, but did Derek Hogue play drums on some of your stuff? I think he did, right?
He did. Yeah. Derek played with me for a long time, actually. And I loved playing with him. Just super forceful, strong, wiry guy who his drum sound is like, yeah, he's a very special, very hard hitting, precise drummer, but tons of feel and great ideas. And Derek's just a great and very smart man. He is the person who's probably most responsible for all of the internet presence of G7. Like he runs his own website design company called Amphibian.
Mm-hmm.
And like most of us, if there are still websites for these bands on G7, we probably all worked with Derek at some point
Nice.
to make them half decent. So yeah, Derek's amazing.
Nice. And then I also saw Christine Fellows appear in your credits a little bit on the songs. And Christine's come up on this show numerous times because of her record Roses on the Vine comes up every now and then. And I wonder if you have any, thoughts on Christine's work with some of your music.
Yeah, actually, I sing a song on one of her albums years ago, like at the end of the 90s. And Christine and John Sampson are like that, they're partners. And yeah, she's from Windsor, so not far from Buffalo too.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up coming to Winnipeg like I did and falling in love with the city, and super talented. And she's all over Balanced on a Pin. Actually, she plays piano and backup vocals. And yeah, I've been playing a long time and with a lot of different backup bands. Right.
So cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty lucky. I had like John Sampson played bass for me for a few shows, which was great. Jord played with us for a long time, for a few years actually. Jord was our drummer.
Cool.
On a number of tours. Yeah, just so funny, like just a great guy to tour with because he'd been touring so much for so long, and like nothing fazed him.
Yeah.
He's just like hilarious. Could drive all day and night and just laughing, and told us great stories. So yeah, a lot of good people.
So a lot of people who listen to this show also listen to Chris Hanna's other podcast that he does by himself, but also with Derek Hogue, Escape Velocity. And I believe that you are the singer of the Escape Velocity Radio and Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality introductions. Can you confirm this and tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah, I don't know. That was they phoned me up. Him and Derek, and they're like, "Hey, can you do an intro?" Like I spent a lot of time at Winnipeg at that time too. A lot of the story of G7 Welcoming Committee Records is the story of 91 Albert Street, the Autonomous Zone building. And it was great. Even now it still has the bike shop in the basement. And I actually got married in the offices the G7 were in.
Wow.
Years later, it became kind of you could rent it. It's a hall, it's a beautiful building.
I went up there in October.
Did you?
Yeah. I came to those. I came to those shows at the Park Theater, and the people that were taking me around Winnipeg took me directly to that building, and I walked all the way up to the top floor.
Yeah. John Schledowitz lived in the back with Jillian Roy, and those guys had their warehouse and their offices in there. And then shortly after, maybe a few years go by, and they moved to the floor downstairs into like a much kind of nicer office. And I spent a lot of time there, booking my own tours and working with Derek and Chris, and just hanging out and like I at that time just always was singing, and I used to sing these ridiculous I don't know what you'd call them, but I guess that's where they got the idea. So they called me
jingles.
Up and asked me. Yeah, I'd make up jingles all the time, and I still do it. But it was really pretty funny. I went to Chris's basement, of course, his weird basement studio, and it's fun to go there. Like you just see, I don't know, Todd's underwear, and George's weird earphones that he wears to keep his ear from disintegrating any further. And yeah, it's great. And I sat around with them, and we just laughed our asses off for 20 minutes, half an hour. And I sang that about 15 times and made it stupider each time. So yeah, it's pretty funny when I hear that. I've listened to a couple episodes and I always forget, and it cracks me up.
So Greg, you spent a lot of years on G7. G7's a huge part of your career as a musician. And I'm wondering if you have any particular G7 releases from the label that you really love that you wanted to shout out at all.
It's funny for me because like I didn't have a real background in hardcore music, and I had seen Propagandhi play maybe once when I joined the label, and so I didn't know their music that well. I had their second album, and but yeah, I think that I really gained an affinity for Clan Zoo. Like Clan Zoo and Hiritsuken too from New York. But yeah, Clan Zoo, when they first got signed, I was like, okay, cool. There's another artist on the label that's not playing, thrash or like hardcore music in a kind of traditional way, right?
Yeah.
And so we were a good fit, and we played some shows together that were super magical. And yeah, I love Clan Zoo's Rua album. It's super cool. They're kind of this weird hybrid Irish Australian band,
Mm-hmm.
and they put a couple albums out on G7. But yeah, Rua's just stands up. It's a great album.
Wonderful. All right, cool. So, Greg, over the course of the many years of Propagandy, I'm wondering if you have a favorite Propagandy song or record and why.
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit. You sent me that question just to be aware of, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you did, because I had to go back and really kind of figure that out. And I'm super familiar with Potemkin City Limits and also with Today's Empires. And I think the title song from Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, is my favorite Propagandy song by far, actually. And I think it's because, like, on tour, that was just like we hit a new level when they start playing that song. It's like it's such a classic rock kind of anthem,
Yeah.
in a way.
It's so catchy too. It's one of the catchiest songs in their whole catalog, in my
It
opinion.
is. Yeah, yeah. And I'm a bit of like a singer-songwriter, so I like the catchiness. And yeah, like, those guys are just such expert players, and this song, I think, it's one of their finest moments for sure. And I remember, pretty sure it was this song on the tour I did with them. We were in, maybe it was like St. Louis Obispo, or one of those West Coast California, Ventura, no, one of those cities. Anyway,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did a few stops in northern and western California. And I remember going on stage, I think it was during this song, and picking up Todd. It was like mid show, towards the end of the show. And this was a tour where they had this, like, Shitty McShake was this
Oh,
thing they were
yeah.
doing. You heard about
Where
that? Yeah.
Chris would dress as Ronald McDonald or whatever. Or no,
Yeah,
he would
like,
dress as the Shake too.
yeah, like, they had a couple different outfits, and so the tour manager Sam got in on it, and Derek was always getting dressed up. And at one point, it was just silly. We were having a great time, and it was towards the end of the tour. And I remember going out and picking Todd up on my shoulders, and he was playing bass during that song, and he weighs, like, he's 200
He's huge.
pounds. He's a big guy. Yeah, yeah. I can tell you some stories about that. It was great, but that was pretty funny. And I remember at the time thinking, look, what am I doing? This guy's gigantic, and he's
Yeah.
just thrashing while I'm carrying him around the stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's a great memory of that specific song for sure.
Nice. Okay. Well, Greg, there have been so many fabulous stories that you've shared here, and we could bring it up to today. And you mentioned earlier that you have a record label, Disintegration Records, and that you learned a lot about label stuff from your time on G7, and that you're doing it now. And I'm wondering if you can just tell the listeners a little bit about what you're doing with Disintegration right now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So G7 started to wind down, and I think at that time too, in my mind, I had kind of hit a wall in terms of what I was doing musically, and I thought, I'll just do something different. And so I shifted over to this local label called Small Man, that ended up, my record was the last record they put out ever. And then after they kind of disintegrated, for lack of a better word, I had another album that I had just finished, and I thought, I'll just put it out myself. Like, how hard could it be? And I had been playing at that time with a number of local artists, like a band called Cannon Bros, really young, really incredible musicians. And I was in another band called Nova and another band called Slow Dancers, and we were all making albums at the same time. And so me and my buddy Cam, who was the engineer we were all using, thought, like, why don't we just make our own label and we'll put these albums out? And so we did. And I think we've done at least 10 or 12 albums over the last 10 years, and not a ton. Like, it's not like a backbreaking breakneck sort of a speed that we're releasing albums, but we still do it, and it's pretty low key. Like none of us have spent a lot of time or energy on it. And I don't know. I think that I might not release my next album on Disintegration. I think I'm at that point now again where I'm like, yeah, I tried this and it was fun and interesting, but labels have a lifespan too. And I think that they're a good snapshot of a point in time. And G7 is a great example, of this. They really captured a movement and a moment. And I think Disintegration to some extent did as well, particularly in its first 5 or 6 years. So yeah,
nice.
That's my label.
Did you do vinyl on Disintegration?
We did. Yeah, we did one album called Fireball that my drummer and I did. And we also put a vinyl album out for the Cannon Bros too. I think that might have been the only two.
Yeah, because I know that vinyl right now is insanely challenging for indie labels. And I was just wondering if you had run across any of that craziness lately.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I could, this is a great story, actually. So one of the kisses of death for indie labels is when you invest a ton of money, you don't make much, right? So if you have a little bit, and you put it into an album for a band that just breaks up immediately, it's pretty hard on the label. And I remember that happened with, I won't tell you the artist, but I remember G7 really sinking a bunch of money into one of the bands and really getting burned. They had put tons and tons of energy. And I remember all of it because I was hanging out at the office all the time. Like it was kind of my office too, really, not really, but I made it my office, and they were gracious enough to let me hang out. So I remember that being a real blow to the label. And that I think too is one of the reasons why I wanted to put Maintenance out and have it cost G7 almost nothing,
Yeah.
And so I remember at the time too of just saying, whatever money Maintenance makes is yours. Like just take it. Let's put it to the label. But a lot of artists didn't really think of it that way. It's always a bit of an adversarial thing. Even if it's your friends, sometimes you forget and your egos get in the way. And yeah, I feel like Disintegration, that happened to some extent where we just didn't have any money. People weren't selling tons of albums and no one was willing to tour. A lot of the bands made one album and then broke up. And so doing vinyl, we did the one run of vinyl for the Cannon Bros, and then they pretty much broke up and weren't playing anymore. And so we had, 300 vinyl pressings, like copies sitting in my office at work for 5 years or something.
Ugh, like that. Bummer.
That's life, it's a great album. It's great.
Yeah.
Expensive.
I was talking recently to a Winnipeg songwriter that Jason Tate plays with named Jacob Brodowski, and he was talking to me a little bit about what he sees as like the specialness of the Winnipeg scene. Like there's it's a very tight knit sort of history. A lot of very literary and intelligent songwriters have come out of Winnipeg, and I'm wondering if you can just like reflect a little bit on what makes the Winnipeg local scene kind of neat and a little special to you, who has been a part of it for so long.
Yeah, I think a lot about that. And I when we started talking earlier, I mentioned that the history of the city is fairly unique in a way. We have the thing that I think is our greatest asset as a municipality is the fact that we have the highest urban Indigenous population of any city in the world. We have I think it's about 114,000 Indigenous people, or people who identify as Indigenous, live in Winnipeg, and for a long time that wasn't looked at as an asset, that wasn't celebrated. And I think that growing up here, whether we thought about it or not, we were really I guess racism and the idea of otherness and just colonization were deeply ingrained in the way that we've lived our lives here. And I think for artists, whether you're aware of that front of mind or not, this is a city that's fraught with a lot of tension and cultural violence and cultural difference, and also some incredible culture that's really beautiful and different and unique. So I think that the bands and artists that come from here, some of us, we reflect that in a good way. And that's my theory. It's also, this is what I always say, is that like for thousands of years, it's the junction point of two great rivers. Like the Red River comes up from the States, and it's a massive waterway. And similarly, the Assiniboine, it drains half of this part of Canada, drains into the Red at the Forks here in Winnipeg. So there's these two massive, slow-moving rivers that collide here. And then there's these two, we basically have two seasons. I was telling you, a couple of weeks ago, there was snow on the ground, right? Now it's whatever, 70 degrees Fahrenheit down here. And so we have like winter from October to May. Yeah. And then super hot summer until September again. Yeah. And so there's the collision of these two seasons, right? And then there's the collision that happened here between the indigenous people and the settlers. And then there was the collision between the English and the French. And then wave after wave of European immigrants came. And then later immigrants from North Africa and Southeast Asia. And like, it's a really interesting city in that way. And there was a lot of segregation and choices that were made that were definitely racist. And I think that, growing up here, it's a city in the middle of nowhere, like literally an outpost.
It's really isolated. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's isolated, inherently isolated. It's at a molecular level, right? Yeah. It has this molecular conflict. And I think that kind of breeds a very interesting perspective for us. And maybe that's what's resonated so well. And a lot of us are hyper conscious of some of the political reality too. And I think that has bred this sensibility that people like Chris Hanna and I guess, and me and John and others kind of reflect in our work.
Awesome. Well, Greg, I've really loved spending this hour with you, reflecting about the history of G7 and your place on the label and your releases on the label, and hearing some tunes and, just traveling down memory lane. And I'm wondering if you can just say where listeners can find your work, if you would like to direct them to any specific places.
Yeah, you can, I'm on the internet. You can find me. Disintegration.ca. It's probably, I think that link still works. I paid for it recently, so I know it's going to be there if you look.
I'm actually going to look. Disintegration.ca.
You have a Bandcamp. You can go there. It is. And get my music directly from us through Bandcamp, which is cool. It's also on other, you can download it from other streaming sites, obviously too. But yeah, I'm surprised you didn't ask me more stories about the boys there from Propaganda, because I could tell you lots of great stories. I should tell you one good one that I wanted to tell you.
lay it on me. We can end here nicely with it.
Yeah. Well, I know you were going to probably get me to the point where I tell you why I thought they're a great band. And yeah, it's not because they can do a lot of chin-ups, that's for sure. So one day we were in I think it was like Olympia, Washington or somewhere like that on the West Coast tour that we did. And I don't know, we were all just backstage hanging out, and there was a pipe on the wall, and I was hanging off the pipe just goofing around. And Chris is pretty competitive guy, right? He's grew up in a military family, and so was I. Like, we both had Air Force dads, and anyway.
And you and Hannah both have distinctive biceps.
Yeah, we were in decent shape, at that time. So I said, I forget how someone challenged us to a chin-up contest. Yeah. And Todd got right in on it too, right away. Todd's like, oh yeah, let me in on that too, right? So the three of us did a chin-up contest. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that I won that fairly handily. Yeah. But no, they're great guys, man. I tell you, Todd is just he's such a wonderful person, great artist, and just a thoughtful, kind, and good person. And Chris too is just, like I told you earlier, has been a real gift to know, and really gracious and good guy. So, and Jord, one of the best people I know in the world. So yeah. Great, awesome. Great band, great people, and some cool fans. I'm really glad to meet you, Greg. Thanks very much for inviting me on and talking like this, man. It's been fun.